Hi there, it's Ron Gula from Gula Tech Adventures, and in this week's VC101 video, Cyndi Gula and I are going to review Chris Donnelly's top 25 tips for startups. Cyndi, how are you?
I'm doing great. Nice to see you so close to home, Ron.
So close to home. We're here at the Gula Tech Adventures worldwide headquarters in our massive podcast studio. So you were the very first interview that we did on this Gula Tech Adventures YouTube channel. But for folks who've joined us over the last couple of years, just give a quick background of what you're doing today and how we got here to talk about cyber startups and startups in general.
Hi, so I'm Cyndi Gula, voluntarily related to Ron Gula. That's why we have the same last name. We are not brother and sister, contrary to some jokes out there. But when we started our first company in the late 90s, Ron came home and one day and said, hey, I got an idea for a company. Can you do all that business stuff? So I said, sure. So we started the company, exited in 18 months to Interisys Networks, met Jack Hufford. And then when we founded Tenable, Jack and I basically did everything but coding. So we ran operations, sales, legal, marketing, and that was a great time. We exited that, or I left in 2015, and we started Gula Tech Adventures, where we invest in cybersecurity companies, and Gula Tech Foundation, where we also invest in cybersecurity nonprofits and work on policy and promoting cyber to the next generations, and including and calling it data care versus cyber.
Well said. I'll put Cyndi's LinkedIn in the description here. Now, we pitched the 5-slide pitch deck. We pitched a lot of different things with this VC101 thing, but I had this 25 tips for startup founders forwarded to me, and we talked about it on a drive home from a trip, and I said, boy, I wish I could have recorded that, and gee, I can record it. All right, so we're just going to rip through these 25 things. I think anybody who's a tech founder is going to find our commentary a little bit interesting. This is also pretty much an evening at the Gulas. All right, number one.
Well, I do want to say that I did advocate that we should be drinking right now, but we are not.
Do that later. All right. So number one, people do not owe you loyalty. What do you think of that?
I think that's absolutely true, and they don't owe you any respect either. Both of these things are things that you earn. It's a lot easier to earn it when you give it. So I think that there is certainly something to that to make sure you understand how you interact with others. It's very important.
So I definitely agree with that. I also think we need to remind people that you are not the company. So if somebody decides to leave the company, it could be for a whole host of reasons, right? Maybe they're going to be a founder themselves. Maybe they got a better opportunity.
Maybe they're moving.
Right? Maybe it's not you. So that's good. All right. Number two, the worst time to offer someone a pay raise is when they've handed in their notice.
Mm-hmm. Amen. That is absolutely the worst time. If you don't recognize that your employees are not happy or they're not comfortable enough to talk with you, HR, somebody else in the organization, then your culture probably needs to change a little bit so that you actually have that good communication so you keep good employees. But, again, if they decide to leave, like you said, it might be the best thing for them.
Number three, running a business is brutal. You will lose sleep and you will lose friendships.
I don't know. There's a balance. I don't think it's all or nothing. That's not how I look at it. I think you really do need to balance things. People can be more brutal than business, but I guess if you stay positive and you keep everybody focused and moving forward, it's not that brutal.
I mean, let's be honest, there's a certain amount of luck in business. We all think that we're amazing investors and amazing founders, but sometimes timing is not in your control. But I tend to feel like if people work a lot, like they're putting in 60-hour weeks, 80 hours a week, and they're doing it for 10 years, maybe they're doing something wrong.
Yeah, and this lose friendships, I mean, I see it more of you're gaining friendships versus, if you lose friendships, it's a questionable on maybe what was done and how much friends you really were in the first place.
All right, number four, hiring is the most important thing in your business.
Caveat, at the right time, and if you don't correct a bad hire quickly. So I definitely have a caveat in there because there are so many important things. It's really hard to say the most important thing of anything, but people, I would probably replace that with people. are the most important thing in your business, and how you utilize them is going to really dictate the success that you have the potential of seeing.
I think hiring can hurt your business if you hire the wrong people. I also think the strategy of what your business is doing is the most important thing, right? If you don't have a strategy, you can hire great people. Maybe if you hire great people, they'll tell you your strategy is wrong, and you'll go out to fix that. All right. Number 5, just because your calendar is booked out doesn't mean you're moving the needle forward.
I think you just need to prioritize. That one's really hard, and I'm going to say this probably repeatedly, that I think a salesperson probably wrote this, because that's a really hard one. But it does mean, I understand the intent of the statement, meaning just because you're busy work doesn't mean it's productive work. And so I definitely appreciate more effective and efficiency than busy.
I always ask people who have busy calendars, when was the last time you canceled a meeting to do something, more important? And people are always like, well, no, I don't want to be rude. I'm like, you want to be rude, you want to run a business, right? There's a certain amount of opportunistic you need to have time. I hold time on my calendar, and I think everybody should hold time for potentially more important things.
Well, also, if you're going to book your calendar, then book it with fun too. Book it with the important things. Book it with time that you're going to go throughout the office or see somebody for coffee inside the office, just kind of a random happenstance kind of thing. But I definitely don't think calendar equates to effective.
Well, one other thing I'll get your opinion on here. I don't like standing meetings. I mean, you have a certain amount of staff meetings, a certain amount of stuff, but you shouldn't have a standing meeting all the time, because then your week will be full of just standing meetings.
There's good and bad on that. It definitely sets expectation from a point of view of, hey, I need to have this report done, or I'm expecting to get this information so that I don't interrupt somebody else during their day to get the information. So I think, again, it's more about prioritizing and being effective with your time and other people's time than just having a standing meeting for it's a standing meeting.
All right. Number 6, product reviews are a great way to see what problems need fixing.
Or at least what your customers say they need fixing.
Or what the media says you need fixing, right? I've just personal experience across our companies and across Tenable. I can remember any given time we have a list of bugs that are open. We know kind of what customers are complaining about, and when they're going to get fixed. But then we get a review by the media, and it's a completely different use case that none of the customers are doing, but they're doing some tests that's, it's so hard to test malware and vulnerabilities but I think a lot of people, when the media tests their stuff, it's not real world.
And it takes you off strategy potentially, or off message, and what's happening in your company. You should have a better idea of what that is versus what anybody outside says. However, you can get blinded just from internal conversations and being too close to the product and the problem. So there's a balance to both.
Another thing I'd add on that is, you can get a product review. I said the media several times, but if someone's on the internet saying something, they're on Reddit, they're on Twitter, and they're saying good or bad, that's something you should jump on. And how you jump on that can show class. Somebody who does that really well in our portfolio is Hunter's Labs. They've had a couple, product errors that they fixed, and so they're going to do better and demonstrate it.
Well, I will say and add to that it's important to watch product reviews to make sure that if there's a correction that needs to be made or addressed or something, then absolutely. I don't know anybody out there that's not happy when you put a bad product review and then the company contacts you with something that you didn't expect. So I definitely think that shows good customer importance.
All right, number 7. Create a routine that will get you into deep work easily.
Okay. But this is difficult if you wear multiple hats and starting a company. I mean, so many hats. You never know what you're going to walk into at a startup on any given day and any given time. So, yeah, if you have one job and you know what to expect, sure. But I try to be as flexible as possible because I just never know what's coming.
I'm imagining, you said somebody in sales, wrote this. I'm also imagining somebody who coded did this, because a lot of coders want to get into the groove of coding. And I know a lot of the threat researchers they want to get into that route. And even me doing some of our videos, I block out time during the week to make sure I can do uninterrupted work. And I think that's important, but you still got to be flexible, right? If you're the startup founder, you got to be flexible.
Yeah, you got to pay attention to HR things that might come up, anytime. And yeah, that's a little harder for me, at least on the operations side, to go all in on.
All right, number 8, working for free is one of the best ways to get started. Now, we interpreted this a few different ways.
Yeah, I recommend that you know your worth, and if you need to, you defer your salary. You write down some way of assessing how much you're worth. But if you don't know how much you're worth and you're working for free, it's always going to seem like you're behind the 8 ball. You're always never going to get the valuation that you think you deserve. So I think you're really putting yourself behind if you don't actually have a good idea of what that work is worth.
I interpreted this. Everybody knows Jeff Bezos got that magical $250,000 loan from his parents. But when we started Tenable, we floated checks a couple times, but from the profits of Network Security Wizards. And I've seen a lot of founders, when they're working together, if they've been previous co-founders, they're kind of working for free for a bit because they can kind of get ahead with that. And I don't mind that because they're doubling down. Now, not everybody has that luxury. And I think that just the headline itself could be a little disingenuous. Like you said, you shouldn't work for free. You should know your value. But, if you can work for a year and not take a salary, that might really help a company get going, especially if you're hiring people who can't do that.
And again, that goes to the strategy. I mean, how much do you believe in the strategy, and how much are you contributing to that strategy and moving the product forward to then make and build the wealth and worth of the company? Then, again, you still know the value at that point. So it's not really free, but it's for a good reason.
All right, number 9, you will not win if you are not obsessed.
I have issues with this one. Again, I think this is definitely written by a salesperson, because I really have issues with obsessed. Now, I like focused. I certainly think there's focus. I think you can get others to be focused, but I don't think if your level of success is obsessed and you're trying to assume other people will be as obsessed and that's what you grade them on, I don't think you will be successful or happy with anybody else. So I don't think the obsessed is the right word. I think focused. I think making sure that you return to your strategy and keep up with that.
I agree with that. And, if we change the word obsessed to professional, and I said, oh, here's this NFL athlete who works out in the off season and they know all their competition and they know the coaching strategies and they know the stats. They even know their betting. You wouldn't say they're obsessed. You'd say they're a professional. And it's the same thing. When founders kind of phone it in and they don't know their competition, they don't know what's being said about them on social media, you could kind of say they're not obsessed, but obsessed just sounds a little too focused maybe there.
Yeah.
All right. Building your personal brand alongside your business will make things 100 times easier.
Sure. We all talk. So, I mean, at least our industry is really small. So we all talk to each other, even frenemies and things like that. So it's building your brand. I would certainly it's harder to build a positive brand and very easy to create a negative brand. So I think knowing what that is very important. Building it will certainly make it easier. But again, it's that you're a hard worker, easy to get along with, easy to work with, fast, all these things that are more on the positive side. Try to keep your nose out of the negative side of things. I can kind of agree with that a little bit, but it'll make it easier.
When you start out, your personal brand is the company. You are the company. But very quickly, once you're successful, the company is a separate entity. And a lot of times founders don't understand that. And we see founders sometimes, even when they get to 30, 40, 60 people, they still think it's their show and it's not the company's show, which is this other entity. And until you've started a couple companies, you might not realize it. Everybody thinks everything depends upon you. And you're really like the biggest cheerleader and hiring all these other smart people around you to kind of keep moving.
Well, and that again goes back to the strategy. If you know where your company is, what stage they're in, everything else like that, you should be looking forward and know when that time is to step back or to let somebody else shine or to do whatever. So building your personal brand's fine, but you also sometimes have to let it go.
All right, number 11. You will likely fail every single day. Embrace it. It's not a bad thing.
Again, I think a salesperson wrote this just from a standpoint of I don't live my life like that. I don't. Failure to me seems like you don't have the right instructions or idea or other things. So failure is not really the right goals. If you're failing every day, I think your goals are misaligned.
We like to talk about this in terms of Cyndi and I are both engineers, and we want to have the correct decision. It's not about being right all the time. It's having finding that correct solution. But yeah, if you're constantly not doing sales and you're constantly not shipping product, you're constantly not hiring the person you want to hire, you're probably doing something wrong. But I do like the message that you should learn from your mistakes.
Yes, definitely. And if you're constantly upset going to work, or you're constantly miserable when you leave, or you're constantly working 60 hours a day, again, I think you're doing something wrong.
Number 12, you don't need funding to get started. And if you've watched this channel, we've done videos about this. What do you think? Do you need funding to get started, Cyndi?
Yes. I don't think that you need funding to get started, but know if and when funding gets you to the next level that you want to be at. So if you need to hire somebody quickly that codes either better than you, or I don't code, so somebody who actually codes, I'm not going to get anywhere without funding in order to pay them. So, there's definitely the strategy, know when, timing, luck, all of those things.
Yeah, a lot of caveats on this. If you've watched videos on this channel, you know that we talk about how far can you go without funding. But I think a lot of people confuse funding with success. Funding is more of a commitment. Now you've got another partner that you've got to make whole. Even if you go public, that's the starting line for a lot of companies. So the question is, what are your goals and how do you get there? And that comes back to the whole strategy thing. All right, number 13. Your best ideas usually come when you're away from screens.
Yes, I definitely think that's true, because sometimes you're too close to the problem, you're too close to the issue, you're too close to knowing where you're going, stepping back, taking a look, seeing that forward. Sometimes you do have to get away from the screen and talk to people. I mean, if you're not talking to your customers and knowing what the problem is, you're going to have a harder time solving it for the customers. So you can't really talk to customers and be in front of the screen the entire time. So I definitely agree with that one.
I think for iterating on your problem you're solving, you shouldn't be starting a company if you're figuring out how to solve the problem. You should know that, right? 5 slides, pitch deck, what problem you solve, how do you solve it? Show me some proof. You should have some proof you know what you're doing. But iterating these ideas, how to sell them, how to license them, how to convince customers to buy them, definitely a lot of ideas there. I also think a lot of founders should think, if you have the ability to invest in other companies and participate with incubators, get other ideas that way, you might see other approaches from other companies that can help you out.
Well, one of the benefits that I had at Tenable was I bought everything. So I got to see how everybody else licensed their software, buying hardware, when things were a real pain that I did not like dealing with that vendor, and when things were really easy. And you know what? You can just, it's a lot easier to edit than create.
Awesome. Number 14, you will have to work in multiple positions when you start. Absolutely.
My
right?
comments were 3 exclamation points here. Yes, 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 yes.
I think the tagline here is, when do you let go? A lot of times founders who do everything, they don't have that trust that they can bring somebody else in who can handle that. And so what advice would you like? When should you let go?
I got really good at putting myself out of a job. I had so many hats that it really became, when the issue becomes detrimental to your other work, is really time that you need to look for help and see where your strengths are, where your qualifications are, so that you are still doing, 1, the thing that you want to do, 2, the things you're good at and capable of, but 3, you know what, put yourself out of a job. It really takes a lot of reflection to know where those good things, where those bad things. But if you also ask the people who work with you or for you directly and ask them, hey, what could I do better? Is there somebody else that would have better skills that would be enabling you to do your job better? That's very powerful.
If you hire somebody to take over for what you're doing, it's still your responsibility, right? You have a role in hiring that person, and if they're not getting the job done, you need to replace them. And that's part of that. You could be making a mistake every day. Like, so it's definitely interesting. Definitely interesting.
Well, and that also goes to making the strategy and the focus public and transparent, because it's very easy to see if somebody's doing the correct job, if everybody knows where the boat's going. But if you see people are rowing and going in the wrong direction, it's very easy to then go to leadership, whether it be HR or other people, to say, hey, do you really think this person is going in the other direction? And it's incumbent. I mean, really, the culture of the company should be transparent and able to have those hard conversations.
All right, number 15. Most founders are busy doing the wrong things. Find the 20% that's driving the results and double down on them.
I think, yeah, try to hire or distribute other work so you can focus. So it ebbs and flows. It ebbs and flows. And again, I mean, maybe I was a little bit more unique having so many hats and running operations that it really, I had no time to concentrate on anything. But if I hire somebody and their job is to concentrate on something, then my job is to make sure that they can concentrate on that job.
You know, they say the C in CEO or any chief is really change. And, you know, maybe you have a good week and you're really productive and you're like, I'd like to do that again. And then you have a dry spell for a couple weeks after that. So it's really hard, I think. I mean, on one hand, we're saying you make a mistake every day. On the other hand, we're saying 20% of the time you're doing really good. It's tough. There are no rules. Everybody's different. You might have some good days and some bad days, and it's okay to change things up.
Yeah, and this idea of doubling down on them. I mean, if you have the luxury of doubling down, and that's your real good skill and your point that you're benefiting most to the company, then hire somebody to do the other stuff that you are not doing so well.
Now, this next one, I have some controversial thoughts on, but number 16, network as if your life depends on it.
Yeah, again, here we go, that sales guy. I cannot not read this with a sales guy.
Could be a saleswoman.
Yeah, I actually say for women, I say guy too. So from that standpoint, I do mean inclusively everybody in sales. It depends on where you fit in the organization and what you're doing. I mean, for me, I was in back office. I didn't need to network. I didn't need to network the outside. I needed to know my customers. I needed to know my customers really well. And I needed to treat the customers and get their issues solved. Did I need to have a drink with them? Did I need to meet new customers? That wasn't my job. My job was supporting the customers that we had. So I didn't like this one at all.
Yeah, so my feeling is when I would tell the employees at Tenable, look, the next employee we hire might be a friend of yours, might be somebody at church, somebody you bump into at the grocery store. The next customer we get might be somebody like that. You know, you want to have that attitude. But at the same time, I see a lot of founders waste time going to these network events, meeting other founders, other investors. And it's like, look, if you want to be seen, that's fine, go to that. But I know some founders are doing it like every night. And I don't know how that's one of those things that aren't on that 20% list.
Right.
Now, if you're trying to fundraise, go to fundraising events, right? That makes a lot of sense,
and
right?
This goes to strategy and focus and why and what you're doing, and that makes sense, and to be effective and efficient about it. But if you're going to lots of networking events and you're not getting, 1, any new leads of customers, 2, any new employees, 3, any new whatever, I don't understand why networking would be the number one thing that you would be doing.
And I think this also comes from a lot of folks we talk to come out of the military. They tell people, oh, you need to network to find a mentor, to find other professionals, to find like-minded individuals. And I almost never see people really finding on fertile ground. They go to a lot of these meetings, and it's almost like dating before they kind of get into their clique and realize that they probably know enough to kind of get by on their own.
One thing I would say, though, is networking really increases your confidence. And so if you're networking to try out your idea, if you're networking to just get better with communication, because that's not your strong point, is if you're networking to do all of the things to improve yourself, then yes, I would agree. Network like your life depends on it, because you're constantly improving yourself, and it will translate in a way to the company if that's part of your strategy.
Another thing on the networking thing is know your pitch, right? So I'll make another plug for the 5-slide pitch deck. I've seen a lot of founders go to networking events and not pitch their ideas really, really well. It's like they never thought about, how do I describe this to a potential investor, a competitor, the parent of an employee, and it's like they somehow that has to be all different. Like, no, it should be the same. Use 5 slides and go for it.
And plus, a lot of times we get caught inside baseball, where we're talking to our same people and we're talking to the same people who understand the language we're speaking. So to that end, crossing over to people who are not inside your industry, networking does help.
Number 17, the A players aren't often the loudest, but they're the people getting stuff done.
Yeah, and you should recognize this, and you should reward them, and often. And if you are not recognizing that, who your A players are and who your B players are, who your hunters are, who your farmers are, and how to best utilize them, then that's a problem. I mean, you need to step back and analyze your culture, your people, and put people to be the most effective and enable them to do the job that you've hired them for. You might have a B player, but you can get them to be A player effective if you give them the right tools.
And we've heard of like oil and water. Sometimes people don't mix, but we got Myers-Briggs. We've got a lot of other constructs. One of the ones that we ran into was the fire, the water, the earth, and the air. And I guess my point is, even if you have an MBA, even if you had some psychology in school, having an environment of people and then understanding how they work together and who works well together, people are not all the same. And figuring that out is a really hard thing to do sometimes.
Yeah, there's definitely square peg, round hole. And I've seen so many founders fall into this, that there is a job description and there is the assumption that everybody's going to do it the same or approach it the same or get annoyed or off track for the same reasons. So you really do need to find people's strengths and lean into them.
And when you have the complexities of a remote workforce, where you're doing things over Zoom and email and Slack, getting in person, getting travel, it can be kind of interesting. With developers, the stereotype we always hear is like, 10% of the people do 90% of the work. And, if that was true, then you could just cut 90% of your staff. But of course that's not true, but it can be frustrating to look and measure people based on productivity and group output. So it's definitely something you got to track, but it's tough.
And just because you're a founder or you have a great idea or you work well with others does not mean that you're a good manager. And so investing in training for the people that you expect to be managers, so that they can see these things, so that they can be trained in these things, so they can know how to have the conversations and identify strengths, that is actually very important. And I've seen so many founders not do that until very late. And so they just promote the good engineer who, seem to be doing the 90% of the work. Well, if they promote them into a manager, which they're not comfortable in, not only is their productivity going down, but everybody that works with them goes down too.
When I first read this, I thought it was going to be, A players hire A players, B players hire C players. And it wasn't there. But one thing I really do think is relevant here is that if you have a founder, if you're not hiring somebody smarter than you are and enabling that person to succeed, they don't have to be as experienced as you, but that should be your role as a CEO. Now, talent's hard to find. You got to grow it. So you can get somebody less experienced and maybe grow some of these people. All right, number 18, make your team your top priority and they will make your customers their top priority. Again, with a salesperson who wrote this.
Yes, but I agree with this. I agree wholeheartedly. Enable your people to do their jobs. If you enable people to be able to do whatever they got hired to do, then they're going to be happy. You're going to be happy. You're going to be able to help them grow. They're going to be able to help you grow. And it's that communication again. You need to make sure you're setting the right expectations so people can meet those expectations. When somebody is underwater and they're overworked and underutilized, or either overworked or underutilized, the frustration, the negativity spike is huge, and you can do things to avoid it if you have the right culture to talk and work through these things.
So along those lines, I definitely agree with that. How do you feel about recognizing people who go above and beyond? Does that help culture, or does that somehow undermine it a little bit?
I think you have to do it correctly. I think that there's a good way to do that internally, where you have internal people give the awards to other people internally as compared to leadership doing it, because then it's your peers that are saying that you're doing a good job and recognizing that. So there's trickiness to that, but at the same time, whereas I promote transparency, not everything in everybody's business needs to be out there. And so sometimes you need to know your culture. And if you have to say, hey, you know what, pull somebody aside, say, you're doing a great job. I'm not making it public, not for any reason, but I just want to make sure that you're not uncomfortable with this accolade, because it depends on the people.
And number 19, I have some issues with this.
No, me too.
Always give more than you can take. I'm not too sure what they mean by this.
Does this include razzing? You know, oh yeah, I can dish out more than I can take, kind of thing. I understand trying to deliver more than other people do, or that you're expected, but at the same time, that sometimes creates an impossible work environment that you can't keep up with. So I'm not really sure where that one came from. Again, sales guy.
And I mean, I cherish everybody who ever worked with us, but I don't feel like we took stuff from them a whole lot. So maybe we're interpreting this one a bit wrong. But, you know, be truthful, work hard, you know, try to set the example for others. But I mean, if you do that well, it's going to be really hard to like take from other people. So I just, this one definitely didn't resonate with us. Now, maybe we're interpreting it wrong, but it's good.
Well,
All
we're
right.
just givers. Right?
We're givers. There we go. There we go. Both engineers givers. It's impossible to do 110%, right? There you go. All right. 20, know your target customer almost better than you know yourself.
Yeah, a lot of technical founders are great at the solution, but sometimes they don't know the problem. And so I think that there's things to do to avoid struggling, imparting that. And then the secondary piece is to getting this into your team, into your sales team, and other things. So, and I'm specifically speaking of technical founders right here. When you coded stuff, you would talk like I knew what you were talking about a lot of times. So luckily, I kept asking questions and tried to make sure that if you had expectation on me to be selling or to do something with the customers, I had to know more information and I had to have it delivered differently. So there is founders, yes, you need to know what the problem is.
So when we started, we didn't have the ideal customer profile or any of that kind of terminology, right? But what we had is something we try to tell people is like, know what problem you're solving, try to have some proof for how you solve it, and never really forget that. If you do that, things are going to take care of themselves pretty good.
But sometimes what people do is they stumble over this and they assume your target customer almost better than you know yourself, and then they deliver a solution that the customer doesn't really want. So you really do need to know your customer. And when I agree with this, when you're solving the solution and the pain point, but you do again have to step away and making sure that you're not just spinning wheels for spinning.
All right, number 21. This is one of my favorite ones. Meetings will take your energy. Keep them brief and targeted.
I'm just going to let Ron talk on this one.
Oh my goodness.
Keep this meeting brief.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
That's funny.
I'm just kidding. So if you run and set expectations, it's good. If not, then you almost have, like, if you're running the meeting, you need to set the expectation of the meeting and you need to run it, operate, and efficiently. But if you're not running the meeting, you kind of have to get good at to interrupt politely. so that you can redirect the conversation, so that you can ask what are we trying to get done? Because sometimes you get saddled in a meeting that you're not running. And so it's really sometimes difficult to interrupt and interject. And you need to identify when it is a bad meeting and be able to do that.
I like agendas. I like having a very specific set of what we're talking about. And my pet peeve is when we're done with the meeting and somebody says, hey, I got one other thing I want to talk about. And it's a strategic issue, but this is not the time or the place for that. You have to practice a little bit of politics. As a CEO, I always felt this was like using nuclear weapons, right? You have the ability to kind of trump somebody or to revoke somebody's meeting, but if you do that a lot, it kind of destroys your culture. So you really need to know when to do that, when not to do that. All right, number 22. If you're not using AI to improve processes, you'll be overtaken by people who are.
Yes, I'm done.
Yes, I'm okay with that as well too. But what does that really mean, right? Do I need to have open AI ChatGPT read all my emails and prioritize them for me? I think a lot of people are having a hard time applying this, and they're feeling very, very left out because it's moving so fast. So what I've been telling people is, look, you need to mess around with this. Even if it's just like what we're doing, I use it for the art and the video generation, some of the editing for videos like this. It keeps you fluent with what the tech is out there. But, there's new things coming out all the time. There's new ways to run board meetings, right?
Yeah, and it also keeps your employees happy and targeted for doing the things that might be mundane and not necessarily needed to be done in a slow process. So this specifically says processes. And so improving processes, I don't know a place that it would not be incumbent on somebody to look at AI to improve the processes. Because if you are, again, strategically looking forward, how do you improve processes? Because that's going to keep your people happier, and it's going to keep your customers happier. It's going to keep and move everything faster. Everything is moving so fast, you don't have time to wait and build things, the slow way anymore.
So you didn't have AI, but when you were running the Nessus team at Tenable, you were doing like $50 million in revenue with 3 people?
Yeah.
Right?
And it was very much processes, and we automated. So sometimes, using automation to improve processes, maybe you can change AI to automation, yes. But the problem with automation, people don't know how to test it, don't know how to verify that they're doing it correctly. And so you can then implement AI in order to do those type of things. So we are moving too fast. Technology is moving too fast in all things, even people who are manufacturing little widgets that are physical and everything else. It is process, flexibility, focus, efficiency, and it really is just going to make people happier working.
We've had a couple portfolio companies reduce headcount and replace those headcount with people. And that is a reality of, or replace those headcount with AI. Thank you. And that is a reality of the industry. I think people are really concerned about that. I think a more positive way to look at this is that as you grow your company, you're going to need more people. And the processes you're talking about, the more you can automate with the people you have, the more efficiency you can get out of them, the more revenue and customers you can support successfully in a joyful, delightful manner without hiring, and doubling your headcount. So,
and you can promote those people that you do have that already are good culture fit, already working hard, and you're helping their career path grow into something new as well. So that's kind of where I'm like, the growth is all over when you enable processes.
So number 23. A strong community is worth its weight in gold. Now, I don't know how you weigh a community. Do we get everybody together and put them on a scale and do that? But what's your thoughts on community?
Oh, I definitely think this goes for community, but I include employees in community. So from a point of view, if you have a strong employee culture, company, even industry where you're frenemies, you all understand, for instance, for healthcare, one hospital might be competing for the same doctors, but at the end of the day, they're all there to service the people at the end of the day. I think we have that in cyber as well. It's not so much us versus them. It's us versus APTs. It's us versus other bad actors out there. And it's about keeping people's data secure, online, and capable of operating.
Yeah, we definitely have various communities, right? We've got the communities of like threat hunters, and they tend to share, even though they're kind of competing against each other. They're still worried about keeping Russia and China out of there. You got the community of users, right? The open source users, the people who contribute back to the open source projects and whatnot. And then a lot of companies have these freemium offers, and there's those communities of users. Like people are almost excited. Are you on Signal, right? Well, Signal, you should donate to Signal if you use it, right? I mean, it's not going to last. Anyway, my point there is the different types of communities, and you need to understand sometimes the communities you're in are a product, and people are then going to use that community to then upsell you, and it's this bargain of like you're using this for free, but there's a business model that's kind of dependent upon that. A lot of times people don't understand that, but
You're also talking about communities that are paying attention. I mean, there's a lot of communities that are not paying attention. And so the strong community that are not paying attention actually potentially could be worse because you have an uphill battle to weigh into those. So, politically, from a point of view, a strong, either side of the aisle, left side of the aisle or right side of the aisle, those strong communities, actually, I'm not sure I would say that they're worth their weight in gold if I'm on the other side. So it's, a community is definitely the interesting thing. But I think I take this as the community to which you're serving or you're working with or the industry in. And so I do tend to agree with that statement.
And it's really easy to destroy the trust in that community. So we're recording this at the end of May in 2024, and the news today was that Slack is basically just letting anybody who's using Slack by default, they're going to use those posts to train their AI. A lot of people you have to opt out of that. So that's the kind of thing that can destroy some trust. And I would definitely consider Slack users a community of users.
I would definitely as well.
All right. Number 24, which is basically a rehash of number 22. Systems and processes are absolutely everything when you're trying to scale. We can rinse and repeat what we'd said for 21,
exactly.
right?
Otherwise, things are disjointed. I mean, processes are one thing, but systems and systems are a little bit different because I think they cross over from organization to organization. So from a point of view of how do you get the sales to the operations to get it processed to then get it to the back office and licensing and then to support. I mean, those systems and processes are a little bit bigger than what we were talking about with just processes, in my opinion. But if it's disjointed, there's frustration everywhere and nobody knows how to do their job. And this goes back to enablement. Like the processes and the systems need to enable people to do their job with the least amount of effort possible, which is, again, why I think AI can help those processes.
But I'll also make the point, you don't have to have AI. Automation's good. You don't have to have AI as part of it. You're probably missing out in 2024 if you're not taking advantage of robot process automation, artificial intelligence, but you have a lot of other issues like, are you mixing your customer data with a third party, right? What are you actually going to do with that data? But it's got to be something. All right, number 25. This is probably your favorite one. You can't expect people to hit the ground running if you don't provide the proper training and resources.
This is a tough one for me. I'm surprised you thought I was going to knock this one out of the park. But yes, to a point. Again, it's the expectations to meet them. Some people some people have the right resources and background and expectation in order to do that. Some people don't need training. Some people, the training, again, this goes to, are you talking about managers? Are you talking about people that you hired to do the job better than you're doing it? And so there's some level of this, but again, it's assessing who you have, their strengths, and how you can lean in and enable them to do their job. So what was your thought on this one then?
Well, I think you covered it pretty well, right? You can't expect your people to succeed and do well supporting customers if they're not enabled to do so. And we covered that with some of these other points here before, but the comment here about the ground running. A lot of people, they raise a lot of money, they hire like 50 people, and then a quarter later, if not 6 months later, oh, well, we hired 10 too many, right? So they didn't think about what they had and how they enabled those people. And there's so many things we've done on this channel where we've talked about this. For example, like the org chart. A lot of times people are opportunistic and they have this great person and they're going to be the the VP of this or the chief of this, and there are 4 people at the company, right? So, build the org chart that you need to be successful on paper first, and then hire those people against it. And then as you're filling that out, make sure you do number 25 here and enable those people to don't expect them to hit the ground, but you have to enable them.
Yeah, and this goes to the big point that sometimes I don't see founders put enough effort on HR, that they think they can outsource HR. HR stands for human resources. And so if you're going to outsource your person who manages your other people and how they're doing in their culture, you're going to miss out on a big window on that. And so if having a strong internal HR person, now I'm not licensed in HR. I didn't go to school for HR, but I ran HR till we were almost 300 people at Tenable because I was focused on the people. It's not a title to the point of you need a qualification. I mean, you should be qualified, but it's more than that. And so you can outsource a certain block, tackle, payroll, that type of stuff, but that's not HR. And so this whole point of your org chart, enabling your people and making sure that they're able to hit the ground running or be happy at your business, that they're not frustrated, that you identify negative things before that you make a culture that people can come to approach somebody, whether that's you or not. I mean, we had an issue because we're voluntarily related. So if somebody had an issue with me, they couldn't talk to Ron. But if they had a problem with Ron, they felt like they couldn't talk to me, but they still did. But that's all right, because that's the kind of culture. We made sure people were not going to be punished for not being able to do their job and being frustrated.
All right. So that was the top 25 tips for founders. We've talked a lot about different things on this channel here about starting companies and how to run companies. It's choose your own adventure. If you're doing this founder's journey, or if you're thinking about starting a company, Cyndi and I really want to encourage people to do that. Watch our 5-slide pitch deck. If you can answer all those questions, that's good. If you start obsessing about, books about how to start tech startups, different things like this, you might lose the point. Like, you want to start a company to solve a problem and hire people to help you achieve that vision. So, any final words, Cyndi?
Yeah, and pick up nuggets along the way. I mean, you're not going to be able to read a book and it's going to tell you A through Z. You're going to be, oh, that's a great idea. Oh, I heard that here. So do be open, listen to other people. And that's where that, not necessarily networking, but communication really will help with talking to other founders, because it can be very lonely. I mean, that's one of the things that, when there's a single founder and they don't have anyone else potentially to lean on or talk through, I find that very, very hard to be successful, because it's harder to deal with that. So network, talk to people, you're not alone, and get out there and do a great job.
All right. Well, for Cyndi Gula?
Yes, Cyndi Gula.
That's right. I'm closing out. So for Cyndi and Ron, definitely thank you very much for watching this episode of the Gula Tech Adventures YouTube channel. This is a VC101 episode. If you like this, give us a like on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, connect with either Cyndi Gula with a Y on LinkedIn, or connect with me, Ron Gula, on LinkedIn. Let us know if there's other things you want us to cover on this channel. And thanks for watching. Have a great week.